Hi, I'm Colby, and we're only a few days away from Halloween. So today I want to recommend a few underrated Halloween films that you should definitely check out this year. So if you've already seen a lot of the classics like Rocky Horror Picture Show, Nightmare on Elm Street, or The Exorcist, these are some films you should definitely check out. And I've been living in the UK for the past several years, and Halloween as a holiday is pretty underrated here. So I wanted to start out with a film that celebrates that. So my first recommendation is An American Werewolf in London. Now, this is a 1981 film directed by John Landis, the same guy who directed Blues Brothers and Animal House. And it's really funny and also quite scary and just celebrates all of the really goofy things about Halloween in quite a unique way. It has a lot of the campy vibes of like Hocus Pocus or like Rocky Horror Picture Show, but it also really builds to an exciting climax that's, honestly pretty scary. Now, the star of this film is just the prosthetics and all the effort and costume design that they put into the werewolf. It's just really cool what they're able to accomplish. It's just quite a creative and different film than a lot of other films that I've seen. Now, I want to stick with the London Halloween films, and my next one is Last Night in Soho. So this film came out last year, but I don't think enough people saw it. And I think that this film is another one that really captures spooky side of London, and it captures it both in modern times as well as in the 60s. So if you want to jump around different decades, these two films are a really good pairing in that way. It also has a lot of cool costumes, and the elaborate setup and design that they do to capture Soho in the 60s is really cool. Their effort is really well spent, and if you've ever been to Soho, you can see just how great of a job they've done. Now, the film also has a mystery that you're trying to solve throughout it that really builds throughout it till its climactic ending. For number 3, I want to recommend M. Now, this is a silent film, but it's so scary. It's a 1931 German impressionistic film. M is a terrifying story about a child napper, and it clearly inspires modern movies like It. And the way that it's able to scare you without dialogue is incredible. The shadows and stuff that have become staples of horror films are really scary here. The way that this film is able to scare you and build the tension, just even without dialogue, is so impressive. The use of these shots that kind of create this creeping sense of dread, and this how much you feel for these characters is just so impactful. And if you haven't seen this movie, I'd highly recommend it. And if you're a fan of the horror genre, you definitely have to check out this film. So for film number 4, I'm going to cheat, and I'm going to recommend 3 films all about Dracula. So Nosferatu, the 1922 silent film, Nosferatu the Vampire, the 1979 Werner Herzog film, as well as the 1922 Bram Stoker's Dracula by Francis Ford Coppola. Now, each of these films tells pretty much the same story, but the way they tell the story is very different, and so they're each worth watching in their own way. The 1922 film is a silent film, and it relies on this German impressionistic style, similar to M, with these shadows and this kind of over-the-top performance that is very scary in its own way. And you kind of just have to be sucked into the magic of the style and the presentation. And if you allow that to happen, you can really enjoy the film despite its much lower budget than these 2 other more modern tellings of Dracula. The other 2 versions of Dracula are also really interesting. Werner Herzog's relies more on the horror and goes for the more realistic version of a vampire. Like, what would a vampire look like if it actually existed in the real world? And because of that, it's a much scarier and darker film. Compared to Francis Ford Coppola's version, which is a much more specific version about lust and about this desire. And it goes for a more kind of theatrical or poetic version of Dracula. And I really appreciate kind of the over-the-top costumes and styling. If you've seen other Francis Ford Coppola movies, this film is nothing like this. This film is, a bit goofy in some ways because of how direct it is about its subject matter. It's very odd for a film to just be specifically about lust and desire, and it's not really about character development in the same way. This film is much lighter than Werner Herzog's, and it's not really a horror film. It's not necessarily as scary. There's a lot of costumes and over-the-top accents. Keanu Reeves has a horrible English accent, and in some ways that kind of works for it. It kind of reminds me of a bad theatrical version of it, but the quality of acting means that you focus more on the kind of allegorical ideas that it's trying to say. And I really, really appreciate that. And I think the movie's a lot of fun. And again, it follows that kind of campy Halloween vibe. So if you're looking for more of that, if you like stuff like Rocky Horror Picture Show, you're gonna like this a lot too. My fifth Halloween recommendation is the 2015 film The Witch by Robert Eggers. So if you've liked films like The Lighthouse or Northman, this is his first film. And it stars a very young Anya Taylor-Joy as well. This film is probably the scariest one on the list. I also want to put this on the list because Halloween, to me, Halloween starts with stories like Spooky Hollow. And I really enjoy that New England rural, like, spooky vibe. The way the shots of like forests and stuff, like that overbearing idea that like the headless horseman could be running around. This story takes place in the 1600s in New England, and it's about a settler family that gets expelled from their community. And so they're just in this vast forest and vast area by themselves. There's no one else that they can rely on, just totally isolated. And then there's a witch. And I'm not gonna spoil anything else, but it just gets darker and darker, and it combines kind of the supernatural with the isolation and the inability to get any help. And I think that is really, really scary and one of the things I love about this film. Anyway, those are my 5 Halloween recommendations. I'd love to know what you think are some really great underrated Halloween films. So let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Bye.